So good morning and welcome along, everyone. Glad that we can actually get to share in today's workshop together. And what I'm going to be sharing on is really introductory, but introductory not in a sense of how to use a tool necessarily, because I want you to have dived into that. But I want to introduce you to all the different ways in which AI can really enhance the work we do in our workspace. I think it's going to be an absolute game changer in terms of ministry and your capacity to be able to do more, to put your church on the cutting edge of interfacing with community in which you live, and then the larger digital landscape of where you'll find digital citizens all over the globe. So good morning and welcome if you're just joining in. G'day, Kim and Jonathan, a couple of friends from, Jonathan, a friend from long ago in South New Zealand, and Kim, Charlestown. So welcome along, and Justin as well. Glad you're here. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I'm just going to step you through just a couple of things by introduction. Then we're going to jump online into ChatGPT, and I want to show you the way I go about constructing prompts. And then I've got a whole lot of prompts that I'm going to just send you. So I'll get you at the end of this to put your email address. In fact, you can do it now if you like. Just put your email address in the chat. That way I will then be able to, at the end of this, make sure you get that. And then I'll also post it as a link on AUC Ministerial, the kind of prompts that I've created. And I think prompts is one of the big spaces that AI, particularly ChatGPT, comes into its own, our ability to create prompts. So here we go. I'll share my screen and we'll go from there. And hopefully I can get this whole thing working as it ought to. So yeah, where I want to take you, you've got your phone with you. I'd love it if you could get your phone out right now. I'll keep an eye on you as we go so I can see that you're engaging as well. If you've got any questions, please, this is a Zoom session. The way as we go. If you can keep yourself on mute until you ask a question, that'd be appreciated. So what I want you to do, fire up, get ready to join in. You can either do it using your computer, using the link that's there, polev.com/Neil Thompson 071, or just use your phone as a way to interact. And the idea behind this is, here's my first question for you, okay? So, and these are my answers. So these are some of the AIs that I've used, but what AI tools have you used? So just, you can enter as many of these as you can, and just, and we'll see which one. So ChatGPT, has caught a little bit more use, and so on. Yep. Okay. Oh, Bing. Yep. Nice. And Google Bed is another one. So if someone's into Stable Diffusion and Midjourney, okay, I love that, right? Yeah, really good. It's separating some of the words around, but that's okay. We can handle that. So if you're just joining in, welcome along. We're just, if you use the little QR code at the top, it'll actually take you through to a poll, and you can just enter in there what AIs you're using. And we're getting a bit of a feel for how many of us, or UPDF. I love those PDF things that can help summarize PDF documents. I did that with Jones and Wagner stuff, and had a really intelligent conversation with it in terms of, summarize his view of righteousness by faith. And I loved how it was able to evidence all of that. And there's some pretty solid tools coming out in those spaces as well. So looking at this, there's a whole range, and yes, this is the thing, right? There's so many different generative AI tools that exist and that are really impacting in terms of ministry and what we're doing in ministry. So I see this as an evolving landscape for us. And I see it as really we're on the cusp of some really truly disruptive things in ministry. And I mean that not in a negative sense. I mean this in a really positive sense. This is going to be a really positive disruption, but there are some risks that we need to talk about. So using the same poll though is, how much experience do you have with AI? So again, using that QR code at the top, if you haven't joined in already, you can use that QR code at the top and you can join in. But how much experience have you got? Are you a big fan, or are you a novice, or somewhere in between? And so, yeah, just join in and cast your vote. This gives me a bit of an idea of where you're at and and how you would rate yourself. Are you a regular user? So yeah, we've got yeah, all right. So we've got quite a few novices here. This is a perfect space for you. We've got some semi-regular. Oh, I love the way it's shuffling those around. Okay. So we don't have many big fans, and I guess if you are a big fan, you've kind of got that mostly sorted, is my guess. Although the risk factors, and I've been talking with Norma Holo and other members of our university staff here around what are the risk factors to do with AI and its potential impact on us in ministry. So there's some real key things there that we need to be aware of. So getting a head around that. So this is kind of cool. And so let's move on now, okay? And you can keep voting on those if you want to. There's no problem at all. But the purpose of today is I want to step you through these kinds of things. I want to talk you through the prompts for ChatGPT, the way that I've evolved my use of ChatGPT over the last 3-4 months, and the way I'm actually getting it, and the way I'll be using it with my students in class. It's my full intention that I'll be using it in class to really help students. And then I want to give you a bit of an AI demo and then talk about some of the ethics and some of the risks, because there is a significant risk to us in our involvement in ministry with it. And then we'll talk a little bit about limits and problems. But anywhere along the way, if you've got a question, just go ahead and sort of ask away. Very happy to take questions, and we'll go from there. So as we've set up, this is being recorded. It's being recorded. The link to this we've posted on AUC Ministerial for others to actually have a bit of a look at. But right up front, I just want to talk about hallucinations, the quality of training, what it is. The machine has got data that's gone in, and the machine is going to produce data that goes out, which means if it's got rubbish in, it's able to produce rubbish going out, right? But they're doing a lot of work in cleaning up the hallucinations that happen in generative AI. So ChatGPT, some of the things that maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that I would put in and say, a question like this: 5 towels take 1 hour to dry. How long does it take 10 towels to dry? And ChatGPT, when I first posed that question, said, oh, it takes 2 or 10 hours or something, right? But now it's actually giving the right answer because they're doing a lot of work cleaning up the hallucinations. They're actually working on that. They see that as a major problem of their platform, and it's actually giving less. So the real challenge for us is maybe not so much in hallucinations, although still you need to be aware that it's possible, but the quality of the prompt you use, right? So the higher quality prompt you use in interacting with a tool, the less misunderstandings there will be. You need to understand that it's using, sometimes, depending on the platform, it might be using outdated model sets, and there might be ambiguity in terms of what it is you're asking the platform to do. So becoming aware of those kinds of things means that you just can't assume that it's going to give you the right answer necessarily. That said, they're pretty powerful tools, and the kinds of things they're able to do is absolutely stunning. In terms of truthfulness, so this is from ChatGPT education page. While tools like ChatGPT can often generate answers that sound reasonable, they cannot be relied upon to be accurate consistently or across every domain. So we need to keep that in mind. If you're asking this to do something for you and you're going to rely on it, then, in a moment, I'll show you what happened to a lawyer in New York and the trouble that he got into. It's able to distort the truth early on. And I tested this last night just to see whether it was still doing it, and maybe not so bad. You could ask it to give you an Ellen White quote on something and it would make it up. So last night I asked it to give me an Ellen White quote on ChatGPT, on generative AI and innovation. And it just said, well, look, Ellen White lived 100 years ago. She didn't live in the age of this. And it actually was not tempted to hallucinate, which I was kind of relieved with. But it doesn't mean it won't. So we really need to be checking our references, checking what it's actually saying. But it is a tool that can speed up our workflow. It can actually get harmful content as well. There are stereotypes that will work its way through, so we need to be aware of that. It's been skewed towards Western perspectives of people and things and thinking, so you've got to be aware of those skewed perspectives, okay? So if you're just aware of the broader perspective of these things, it can really help you understand where it's at. So here's this lawyer, right? He has a client who really needs to it got injured on a flight, and this guy uses OpenAI chatbot to look up cases, legal cases, and he ends up with 6 of them that it says are cases, and he presents that in court without checking them out. He actually did ask AI to make sure, and say he asked it repeatedly and said, "Are you sure these are real? Can you give me a reference for these?" And the AI come back and repeatedly said yes, 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 and yes. But in the end, it turned out that they were all bogus. They were all just hallucinated or, untruthful. And the judge didn't know what to do with him. He just thought, well, you're an idiot. You need to lose your license, but he wasn't sure. The whole thing just got thrown out, and the guy lost his case. It's a terrible thing, but it highlights the risks that's there. And I just want to, before we go into the prompts, I just want to talk about this. If you use AI to generate a sermon, there's a risk that sits with that, right? It's super tempting. It's Friday night, you're feeling like you're stuck, you feel like you don't have anything to share, and you just wander onto ChatGPT and say, listen, I need a sermon on, John 3:16, can you knock one out for me? It could do that. And it could give you a great sermon outline of John 3:16 or John chapter 3. But what's the risk factor with that? The risk factor is that you're not wrestling with scripture, that you're actually cutting short your spiritual growth. You're actually robbing yourself. You're robbing your church. You're robbing from your spiritual future growth and your ability to be able to lead in authentic ways. So I would say that's totally the wrong use of generative AI in that space. Using it to generate a Bible study, again, you're kind of not wrestling. If you want to use it as a brainstorming tool, that's different. But if you're using it to produce your work, then you're in this kind of dangerous space. And eventually, if you do that enough, you might end up in the place where you're no longer having an authentic walk with Jesus. You're just relying on AI way too much. And if your congregation finds out, you might totally lose their respect and credibility, and you might find yourself in trouble with administration and so on. So those kinds of things are certainly best avoided. So here's kind of where I'm at. Okay, guidelines. I think AI is ideal to be used as a tutor, as a mentor, as a guide, and not to do all our work. It allows us still to wrestle with scripture, but there's even more to that. We can use it to do things that will aid and accelerate our ministry. And that's certainly what got me super excited about it. So let me just escape out of that now, and I will take you into ChatGPT. So many of you are using many different platforms, and in the platforms you're using, there's a whole range of different ways they approach things, but there's similarities. So the key to this, right? And you can see here on the left, you can see all of the different chat histories that I've got. And, those chat histories go back a long time. So, I've been using this since January of this year, and I'm asking it interesting questions. Like I might say, for instance, I'm giving a lecture on this subject. What are all the categories that I might need to think about for that lecture? And then I'll say, give me another 10 of those to think about. And so now I've got 30 different things to think about, if it's a list of 10 for each. And so here's this big list of things to think about. And in that, I'm then looking at all those categories. It's not giving me the content, it's giving me the categories. And that's a really useful way to use AI. So let me just suggest, for instance, so here's a document which I'm going to share with you. But suppose you've got an evangelistic campaign that's coming up, right? So we'll go to there. And so here's the prompt. So give me an outline for a sermon in an evangelistic campaign run by a Seventh-day Adventist church, bullet points only, to reach secular Australian audience. The sermon will be in the first in a series called, or well, let's give it a name. Let's call it reaching the sacred, or reaching for the sacred. Okay, it really doesn't matter. This is just an example. So it's called Reaching for the Sacred. The sermon title today is finding the finding inspiration in daily life. Okay, this sermon is based on, well, we'll just go with Daniel 2 because, you know, I'm just interested to see what it comes up with. The sermon should outline the key points of Daniel 2, with a special focus on Daniel 2:28 and the rock that comes out of the earth. So these things are things that you might want to change around in the prompt. And comparison between life of key individuals in the story of Daniel with the audience today should be made, and there we go. Now, at the end of that, I might say something like this. Is there any questions you want to ask me before you go ahead and give me the outline? And what that'll do, it'll actually let it do its thing. And so it'll come back and say, oh, thanks for this. I think I understand what you're looking for. So here it is. It's now giving me that as an outline because my prompt is sufficiently detailed to set it up that way. Okay. And so it's come back and said, okay, here it is. We're going to briefly explain this. And so here's a sermon outline, and we're divine revelation and wisdom, the rock that fills the earth, comparison with modern life. And so it's actually outlining a bit of a thing for me. And I'm like, okay, am I happy with that? And I might say, look, I want you to provide another 3 outlines for me to consider and make them more relational and focused on secular audience. And I'm just interested to see what it might do to that. And now it's coming back and it's going to give me more data to play with. And I don't want it to write my sermon, but I'm really happy to use the tool in this way because what this tool is going to be able to do, and it'd be great if you could leave your videos on so I can see, and it just helps me interact. So in this is going to then help me brainstorm a lot to really, just turning your video on rather than leave your mic muted if you like. What this will do, it helps me brainstorm. And I can take all of that brainstorming and drop it into Word. And there I can actually figure out what my outline is going to be. Now, I've used AI in this way, and that's a powerful thing. Any thoughts or comments around that? What do you think about using AI in this way? Have you used it like that already? Yeah, Andrew, you have? Yeah, fantastic. Jaden, I see you're nodding your head. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so you've used that, James, as well. Robert, go for it.
No, I was just going to mention, I was quite amazed by I was just playing, which day is the 7th day, and I was giving it theological, to see if they can get the right thing, and they're getting the right answers. But yeah, I agree. We shouldn't rely on that. We should use it as a tool to add value to what we're trying to process. And I agree with what you're saying. If we don't own it, if we don't wrestle with scripture, it's not going to have power.
Right. Okay. So it's now got an outline. Let's take this title that it suggested, The Unshaken Storm. Like that. That sounds really nice. Now, if I'm planning this as my series and I'm going to say, right, that's where I'm going to go with my series, right? What I want to do next, I want to actually say, well, okay, I want to be able to promote this sermon, right? So what kind of a prompt might I use to promote my sermon? Or before I even get to promoting my sermon, the next thing that I might want to do, and you can do the same, is a study guide, right? So I might say, use a prompt like this. And I'll just take this and then I'll edit it. And so here's what you can actually do. And I will say, using the last outline you gave as the guide, I want you to create a study guide that will be used in a small group with new believers who know very little about the Christian faith. And there we go. Now, what I'm suggesting you do with this kind of a prompt is, after you've written your sermon, you can plug your sermon in. You could even ask ChatGPT to give you feedback on your sermon, how you might improve it for reaching a secular audience or reaching young families or whatever it is. And it can give you that kind of tutorage, if you like, without telling you what to put in your sermon, right? And I'm very particular about those kind of prompts. Don't give me answers, just give me feedback on how it is I might be able to improve. I want it to help sharpen my thinking, not do the thinking necessarily for me, right? So, you know, I've still got my sermon to write, but I'm now asking it to consider what a study guide might look like. And so it's now thinking around that. And it's saying, oh, let me know the desired length. Okay, I forgot to let it know. So I'm saying the guide, the length is 30 minutes. Okay, so now here's a potential study guide that I can then take and use, right? Now, what I could do with that, I could just use it as it is. Definitely don't want to do that. Definitely want to read through it. Give it my imprimatur, my spin and my take, or I might say, yeah, I like that, but I want to tweak it in a couple of different ways. Can you tweak this? So I might say something like, it's got some interesting Bible verses there. That's not bad. But I might say, look, I want the practical applications to be different. So I might say, can you, and I'm just making this up, can you make the practical applications even more personal for families? And so it's giving it to me again, but now it's going to do that for thinking around families. Okay, so now I've got a couple of different variations of that. And I might be able to do many things with that, right? But I'm not finished yet, because now I've got a potential one. And I say potential because what I'm going to do with that next is I'm going to drop that into Word and I am going to edit that. It's going to be my work done with the aid of AI, right? It's important we get that right. And then I want a children's activity to go with this sermon. So I come back here. Here's what I'm saying. Now, based on the sermon you have summarized, create a children's activity suitable for children aged to 12 and so on. So here we go. See what it comes back with. And I can then look for pictures to use. And so here it is. It's like, now, am I happy with that? Maybe, maybe not. I can think of some people who are experts in children's ministry and they're going to look at that and go, yeah, no. And so I'm thinking, I want only 3 activities and I want them to be more user-friendly. I don't know. I'm just making this up in terms of feedback now. So here it is. So it's going to interpret, in some sort of fuzzy way, my very low quality prompt at that point for feedback. But it's now in a reasonably short time. So we've been doing this now for about 10 minutes. I've got 3 or 4 outlines for a sermon with some pretty creative titles to go with it. I've got a couple of examples of a outline for a Bible study that I might use to go with it. And I've also now got a children's activity or 2 that's in the pipeline for me to be able to edit, or for me to suggest to someone else to take and do some editorial work with as part of our team. Now, all of that is, I'm suggesting, could become a part of a workflow to help improve what we do around Sabbath morning or around the groups that we run. But there's more to it than that. So this is part of an evangelistic campaign that's coming up. And as part of the evangelistic campaign, it's like, oh, we need to do some promotional work with that. So you can actually use AI to help you create promotional scripts that you can then record using your phone, and it becomes like a short reel video clip that you can post online. Now, there's a number of ways you can do this. You can do this based on the sermon you've preached, and you can get the reels from that you would post on TikTok and social media. Or you can do this like I'm suggesting here, before you preach, you can create the teaser that people might want to tune into your sermon online, or they might want to come to your church on Sabbath morning, and you can post it online, and then you can get your church members to share that and comment on it, so that the algorithms pick up that this is a thing of interest, and away it goes, right? So this is definitely something you want to play around with, this kind of a prompt. So this is what it might look like, right? So I will go back. Now, one of the things I need to let you know as well, where are we? Is that generative AI only remembers 2000, they call it 2000 tokens of the conversation beforehand. So 2000 tokens, that's approximately 2000 words. Have we gone past the 2000 word limit from when we first asked about our sermon? We'd be getting very close to that. So it's not going to remember necessarily the first part of our conversation. So I may need to remind it of the first part of that conversation before I go into this. But at the moment, I'll take the risk and I'll say, well, look, that I think. So based on this sermon, I've already got you to, yeah, look, I've really written this for one in terms of a sermon that I've already written that I want it to help work with. So based on this sermon, create a transcript for a 1-minute short form video suitable for Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. The script should have a hook and 3 points, and the person must know that the person must know there we go, that the person must know, and a call to action to join us live this week to see the rest of the message. The intended audience is secular young people and young couples with kids. They are secular, spiritual, but not religious, and interested in spiritual things. They want to help their children develop good values and grow into healthy, adjusted, emotionally stable adults. There we go. That's my prompt. Now, I'll put that in, and this is what it comes back with. And now, it's like, am I happy with that? It's a real short little thing, and it's suggesting that there's text overlaying different scenes and so on. So that's not bad. It's a guide that you could use with your team. But I might also say here, give me 3 more. And it will come back now, and it's going to script number 2. And it's doing the same thing. And then script number 3 and script number 4. So what will I do with that? Well, I will take those into the workflow, and I will again edit those into my voice so that it's me that's speaking, but I'm using this as a tool to accelerate my productivity. All right, so let's just pause that, and I just want to have a conversation with you around what you've seen and any questions you might have. This is where you come off mute and we just have a conversation.
Quick question, Neil.
Yeah, Robert.
So if I'm doing a sermon or something for the kids, can I say, after I've got all the information I want for a Bible study group, give me a YouTube clip that illustrates da 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 da? Could it do that?
Could it find that YouTube clip?
Yes.
I actually don't know the answer to that, Robert.
Oh,
but I'm
okay.
sure there's only one way to find out, and that's to give it a go.
I've never tried it. You just triggered my thought when you talked about videos.
The value of AI is that it is a chat bot. So you can literally have a conversation with it.
Okay.
In all that I've done here so far today, it's generating a lot of content, right? And it's generating that freely and easily at a level which is reasonably expert. Okay, now what I could also do is I could go back to our original prompt. So, you know, I'm now going up a long way in our history, and I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to say here, instead of giving an outline for a sermon, I'm going to say, can you suggest a marketing campaign for this sermon we have been talking about? And again, you know, maybe to reach a secular or Australian audience, and so on. So, and I think I will just drop the rest of that out. Can you suggest a marketing campaign for this sermon we've been talking about to reach a secular Australian audience? Any other questions you need to know before you begin? And it'll come back and suggest, well, I'll go down, and it's actually, no, it's certainly. And so now it's suggesting, you know, what it might look like on a platform, social media, online communities, email newsletter, and there's call to action, there's follow-up, there's budget, and so on. What I want you to know is that there are marketing companies that are sacking their people because ChatGPT is able to organize the marketing at a pretty advanced level. Now, I know a thing or two about marketing. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I have read extensively various pieces of literature from sales, marketing, brand generation, brand influence, creating online tribes and online communities, and so on. And what I've seen it be able to do in that space is absolutely amazing in terms of its understanding of the field. So with that being the case, I would say if you're planning an evangelistic event, you would want to get the details of that, and you'd want to come and you'd want to say, okay, I want to market this. How am I going to do that on TikTok? How am I going to market it on Facebook? How am I going to market this on YouTube? How am I going to market this in print media in my local community? How am I going to market this in terms of, you know, maybe local radio advertising or whatever it is? You know, there's so many ways. What's the best way for me to leverage church members in my church so that they help promote this too? They're questions that you can ask, and this is where this is going to help us. You know, gone should be the days when we spend $10,000 on a marketing campaign in a city and get zero results. You should be able to use a budget of a couple of $1,000s to do absolutely world-class advertising in your community that would see people come to what it is that you're offering, because you're now using some really professional tools to help you in that regard. Like when I first discovered that on ChatGPT, I just went, oh, wow, I should quit my job and become a professional marketer to help our local churches market what they do. And then I thought, no, that's really dumb, because in no time at all, you know, everyone would learn how to do it and then I'd be out of a job. The best thing I can do is teach others how to do that. So from the simple idea of I've got a sermon I want to preach, I've taken that, got outlines, I've then got study guide to go with it, I've got a children's activity to go with it, and then on top of that, I've added to it a marketing campaign and ideas around that. And suddenly you can see now what I'm actually starting to generate here is work for a whole team in your local church to get behind and get involved in. This is not something that you need to sweat the stuff around. You can actually unleash your team in this kind of creative way, and you can kick some serious goals. And I mean serious goals. You can start competing in this digital online landscape in such a way that your impact for Christ can markedly go up. All right, any questions? I'm looking at some rather nervous people. All right, you shouldn't be nervous. You should be absolutely excited about the possibilities that are here. Okay, talk to me. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so we can actually just have a bit more of a conversation.
Neil, I've got a question.
Go for it, Rebecca.
With the different AI engines that are out there, what are the pros and cons? Are there sort of the top ones? How do you sort of select which ones are the top ones? And, you know, I don't know, I'd love to see like a table of, you know, what each one's offering, what are the pros and cons, and what are the legal implications of some of them? Are you able to use their content without legal copyright issues?
Yeah.
So big question, you know.
Yeah, Rebecca, I guess the landscape, the digital landscape of generative AI is advancing so rapidly, it's super hard to keep up. You know, in the mid-semester break that I had, one of the reasons why I'm offering this workshop today, at least to get a conversation around this underway for us as an organization in this part of the world, is because I wanted to use AI in the classroom. And in using AI in the classroom, I needed to upskill myself quite markedly. So I've been reading it. I've been watching YouTube clips. I've seen all the things of what not to do. I'm seeing the best use cases of it. I'm seeing how you can create prompts. Like I've got a whole series of prompts I'm going to use with my students specifically that turns AI like ChatGPT into just a tutor. It won't give them any of the answers, but it will help them develop their critical thinking. So there are ways you can use it. The ethical issues are really delicious. I'd like to just leave that to more the end of our conversation today. So I will attempt to answer that. But after, for the rest of us, Rebecca and I were at the same event on the weekend, and we had a conversation already around this. And as a result of that conversation, Rebecca, what I can say is I went online and started looking for more answers. And the more I went looking, the more uncertainty there is around those kind of ethical issues, particularly when it comes to image generation or video generation and so on. And hence the strike that these actors are having at the moment because, hey, they're about to be replaced. So there's a whole lot of issues there. I guess the framework that I'm coming from is to use this as a supportive tool. And from what I can read so far, we're kind of in an okay space if we're using it for non-commercial purposes, right? So if you're generating, like for me, I'm generating images using Leonardo that I'm using in my sermon, but I'm not actually profiting from that. You could say, well, because the sermons are attracting people to the church and they're paying tithes and offerings, maybe in some bizarre way I am, but it's not a direct commercial sense. I'm not selling these and making zillions of dollars on the back of someone else's design work. And I think in the same way, so maybe we're replacing people by using it to generate marketing for us. Maybe not. Yeah, and Justin, I think you're right. Most of the apps are linked to OpenAI's API, which is the same generative AI that ChatGPT uses. Google is an independent one with what it's doing. And Microsoft Bing, I think, is a different one as well. So, there's a couple of competitors there. I'd just say find something that works. Pretty much they're going to work in very similar ways. And there's certainly an arms race on in terms of them improving the quality. And from everything that I've seen, if people are saying, wow, right now, in terms of what these AIs can do, we're going to have lots of these wow moments as we move forward. It's just going to be, oh, wow, it can do it. Oh, wow, it does that. And, so that's coming. Any other questions that people have?
Yes, Neil, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, Eric.
Good. Neil, I understand that AI is as smart as our prompts are. If we put silly prompt, the answer would be silly.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to create intelligent prompt where we can do you have any? I notice you have some own database of your prompts that you use in past, but is there any guide about how to create the prompt, what has to be included in the prompt to get the best answer, to get the best tool?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I think this is the question. So I've been researching a couple of different books on this in preparation for my class that I'm teaching here at uni. And what it's highlighting is there are definite key elements that you can put in that will direct the AI to deliver in terms of what you want. What I will do, I will take a snapshot of that and post it on the chat on AUC Ministerial at the end of this conversation. So I'll bring a number of those things together and I'll put it all on there. So the prompts that I've been using and so on, I'll put that on there as well so people can access that. And I'll include some of the best material from these books I've been reading. Because you're absolutely right. If you don't get your prompt right, it's going to give you a wishy-washy answer. If you want an amazing answer, you've got to bring, and so this is where I think you bring your best to this. You bring your best creativity, you bring your best critical thinking skills, and you ask intelligent questions. And before you ask it to give you the answers, this is something I learned pretty early on. And actually, I learned it from my son-in-law, Andrew, who's joining us here this morning. And his thing was, well, make sure you say, and is there any questions you need to know before you go ahead and give me this answer? And I think that's such a pivotal thing to put in there, because the moment you put it in there, you're giving it permission to quiz you for more detail so it can give you a higher quality answer. And I think that's definitely part of it. And there's other things. There's simple frameworks that you can use to help construct these prompts so that they actually work better for you. Yeah. Anyone else got any questions or queries around what we're looking at here? Okay.
Oh, just sorry, real quick.
Robert,
We've
you're right.
got Eric. How are you, Eric? Just, are there any, do you have one or two websites that after we finish that session with you that you would recommend to answer some good questions like what Eric asked about prompts and how to use AI and ChatGPT and, you know, one, I know there's quite a few of them probably, but do you have one that you refer to regularly?
Look, there's a whole bunch of there. I think, you know, where I went looking for answers, Robert, books are going to be dated too rapidly. Yeah. Even peer-reviewed journal articles are going to be dated because by the time they get up there, the technology is moving so rapidly. So
but I mean a website, not a book.
Yeah. So the place to actually get it is if you just go and you Google the things that you're interested in.
Oh, okay.
And you Google that in YouTube. And you just say, okay, YouTube, can you give me someone who's actually thinking around how to create better prompts for generative AI? And you'll find YouTube clips on that. They might be 5 minutes, 10 minutes long. You can watch them at 1.5 speed. So, you can speed your way through it. You don't have to listen to them speak slow. You can speed them up. But you will get the insights that you're looking for in that kind of way. So I would integrate. So purpose for today for me is to raise your curiosity and to open your eyes to what these tools can actually do for you in ministry. And if you haven't been using it, to encourage you to begin using it, but to begin using it, to go back to what Rebecca was saying, in responsible and ethical ways. We really do need to use these tools ethically. This could be an absolute killer to your authority, spiritual authority, and your ability to be able to grow spiritually, but also your authority in your local church if you use this wrong, okay? If you use it wisely and well, it will be a tool that will be your servant, yeah? And I would want it to be your servant in this. Let me just show you now the other part of this. So I'll share my screen again. And I suggested before coming here today that you needed to get an account with Leonardo. Some of you I see are using Midjourney, and that's fine. Others are using different tools, and whatever tool you're using, I don't mind. But so this is Leonardo. Now, Leonardo, when you first go to its website, will ask you to be waitlisted. That's because the amount they're controlling the influx of users, so that the machine doesn't get overwhelmed with data requests. And so they're staging the development of their tool with a number of users. So it doesn't take long to become listed as a user, and they operate a free account. So you can start generating images for free. So let's go back to the sermon we were creating, which is Daniel 2, around Daniel 2. And so let's create. So Andrew, can you play with me for a minute?
Can do. This is normal for us anyway.
So help me generate a prompt that I might use with Leonardo for the statue. So we're talking. So I need to set the image up. So down here, the image parameters.
4K high res.
Yeah. So I want that to be about 1024. So I'm going to go there, but I want it to be widescreen. So it's going to be now widescreen, right? Kind of that dimension, maybe a little bit broader there.
A bit more, yeah.
Yep, something like that. And I'm going to generate 4 images at once with this. And okay, so we're ready to go. And we can use negative prompts if we want to, because, it might be missing body parts or whatever. But anyway, we'll come to that in a minute. So we'll leave negative prompts off. So we'll just use the standard prompt. So we're going to do this, and we want to create, what is it? We want a Babylonian
statue.
Is that how you spell statue?
No, STATUE. Get rid of the second. There you go. Yep.
There we go.
QE. Yep. In what kind of style do we want?
Well, let's do it with arms crossed, legs together. All right.
On a what would you call the base? On a
base. Yeah.
On a base. Yep.
Yeah. Good. So we're setting the whole parameters of this thing, and now we want this to be
in a desert. I don't know, desert, or do you want to?
Yeah, in a desert. Why not? Landscape.
One S, by the way. We're not going to be eating it.
Oh yeah, we're not going to eat it. Okay, good. Thank you. Desert landscape with stormy sky.
Okay. And a crowd in front. I don't know. Is that too complex?
Crowd of people around. Well, we don't know. We don't know what it's going to do here, right? So let's just see that, and it'll be a golden. So we'll go with this golden Babylonian statue with arms crossed, legs together on a base in a desert landscape with stormy sky and a crowd of people around. Let's see what it does.
Might be too complex.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, I put together a children's story. I wrote the children's story myself, and then I used Leonardo to illustrate the children's story. And within 2 hours, I had my own fully illustrated children's story that I shared on Sabbath with my own little interactive piece to go with it. Oh, now, here we go. What do you think? Interesting. And we can zoom in on that. So that's what it is, and that's high quality.
What are the ears?
On the face. Yeah, and it's got this weird, are they ears kind of thing, all right? So maybe we're not super happy with that just yet, but it's got potential, right? So what do we need to do? How do we need to change our prompt so we get a better result? And anyone else can jump in here now with ideas.
Add a negative.
Okay, so we're going to go to the negative. So what are we going to do? We want disfigure. How do you spell that? F-I-G-U.
R-E.
Yeah, I was just going to this R-E meant. Yeah, disfigurement. Missing
male and royal
body parts. What's that, Eric?
A male and royal person.
So you want it to be a male?
Let's do it.
Yeah, okay.
It could be a Babylonian with an N on the end. That might help.
Babylonian male statute. Yeah, okay. Standing statute. Yeah, okay. Standing with arms crossed, disfigurement, missing body parts.
And the crowd might be a crowd of Babylonians.
Yes. With a crowd of ancient Babylonian people around. Okay, so there we go. See what that does. The free version of Leonardo will offer you, like, I think it's 1,000 tokens for a certain period of time or something along those lines. For each image generation, it's chewing up a certain number of tokens, which will mean that you can not produce maybe as many as you want. They're designed to give you a bit of a teaser. All right, so we can look at these and go, huh, interesting. The arm no longer crossed.
It's a bit short.
He is a bit short. He's looking, yeah, that's looking a bit weird, really. But I guess that gives you the idea, right? So of the kinds of things it can do. Now, you know, there's a whole lot of things that are part of my, so for instance, I got it to produce this image here. Well, actually, it's a not that precise image, but I was playing around with Bible. You can see it's actually hallucinated the Bible here. It's a very interesting multifold Bible. But I actually went with using that kind of as my Bible, and I placed some other elements around it. So you can actually create images for some rather interesting things. You can create them with photorealism. We could actually go back to this and we could say, we want all of that, but we now want to say in the style of vivid watercolor. Okay. And we'll see what happens. Now, I could also add additional prompts in there, like I want it 4K, ultra high resolution, and so on and so on. But anyway.
Neil, quick question.
Yeah.
A thought came to my mind. Like if I've written out my sermon on, say, Word document, and I say highlighted that and put it in this and say, could you create a PowerPoint with these notes, spread them out on different PowerPoints, and then create a background drop that reflects da-da-da-da-da, or, you know.
Yeah, look, maybe. I think, Robert, there's no limit. Now, there is an AI tool that's out there. It's a paid service one, so I've not elected to use it. It's called beautiful.ai. That's got an AI engine built into it that's designed to help you create beautiful PowerPoints. Okay. Microsoft is actually tracking towards that anyway. So they're not going to be outdone in this space either. So I don't know whether I'd actually go down and get a subscription with them. And at the moment, I've got a paid subscription with Leonardo, and I've got a paid subscription with ChatGPT. I early on just chose and thought these are really good tools to have as part of my arsenal of workflow. And I'm happy paying a subscription for those, but I didn't want to multiply that too many. In terms of research, there are some pretty amazing tools to use in research. And maybe, if you're interested, we could chat about those a little bit later. But this gives you an idea, so that's a style of watercolor. You can, whatever style you can think of. And in actual fact, if I go here, and I think it's this one here, this is Midjourney, a style library for Midjourney. So there's a style library for Banksy, and you can scroll through this and you can say, well, I want something in the style of this, right? And this is where, to go back to what Rebecca was asking before, this is where the ethics of this comes really more problematic, because we really are using someone else's style to produce something in the style of. And for instance, now let me go to there and I will just show this again. So these are images that I've actually used now in various endeavors, right? So this here is I wanted a Samoan couple. Now, if you notice, her face is not really that good, right? But as an image, it's like it's okay. The rest of the image worked, and so I just went, you know what? This is going to be so far away from people. It's not going to be on screen long enough. It's not going to bother me that big a deal. The other one over here is actually one that I wanted for a mission campaign we're doing in Melbourne. And I just, we're already there. We're running the campaign. And I said, I just wonder what it could do. And it came back with that. I wanted it on the streets of Melbourne. It was a poster for a campaign reaching out to Samoan people in the community. And this is what it came back with. And I loved the image. It was super solid. Now, what I've done with that since, I've removed the words off that and I've put my own words down there. So, there's sometimes a bit of work to do around the edge of this to actually improve it, but it's pretty cool. This is another one, Jesus with the disciples on the Sea of Galilee. This is in the style of Leonid Asimov. I really love his artworks, and that kind of works for me. Now, I'm not going to sell those to anyone else. I'm not going to commercially profit from it. But if I'm telling a story of Jesus on the Sea of Galilee, I love this kind of work. It's just so rich and glorious. Here's his style again with Jesus in Sydney. I just thought, okay, what could be done in that space? And over on the left is me playing around with Daniel 7 and the beast of Daniel 7. And it's like, wow, so again, I'm wanting to inspire you with what's possible and what you might be able to do, or you can get members of your team to do with you. And, so there's the bear. This guy over here was meant to be the blind man on the road. And this is after he's healed. And I wanted him leaping around with leaps of joy. And so here he is. It's done in a watercolor style. And I really like that. You know, that could make a great children's illustration or a children's story to illustrate what's going on, and you can tell the story in that way. Be aware that this is a very deep hole you can go down, and you could get lost time-wise, spending a lot of time generating stuff. So this is where, if you were to inspire your team to work with you, you can actually grow your team and grow your ability to be able to do different things. And, you know, this is the scary beast that Daniel saw. And I really like that, you know, with the fiery eyes and so on, even though it's, you know, wild. And there's Jesus in the style of Banksy, right? And I kind of like that. It's a bit of a fun thing. I'm not going to use it anywhere, but I just wanted to see what that would look like. And this is what I came back with, that very famous picture. So we've got about 8 minutes left of our hour together today. I just wanted to have this as a general Q&A. What I will say more about the way, so for some of your questions that you've got here, what's the best AI to read PDFs? I will put that. So I've got that in a separate file. I'll link that so you can actually use. Now, I won't claim that this is the best, because it might have been something that I found was the best at that point in time, but this landscape is changing so rapidly that they're updating lots and lots and lots. Okay, so any questions or comments or things that you just want to highlight for the rest of the crew here? This is a great time for us to do that. Who owns the copyright images? Darren, that's a good question. The ones that you generate in Leonardo, if they give you the copyright to all those images, and that includes commercial copyright. But going back to what Rebecca was asking before, there are issues. So if you're doing it in the style of Banksy and you're knocking off Banksy in that style, then you're really profiting off the work of Banksy. And so that's not really something that you should do. But if you're just using it to generate, you know, images or combos of images or whatever, then I think that's something that, yeah, fair enough. Why not? So be aware of the ethical issues around this. And it's a minefield. The big businesses and are likely to have mass lawsuits. Well, there are some already before the courts in America trying to sort out the legality of this. But I think if we're using this not in a commercial sense and not ripping off someone's art style, but we just say, all right, I want something in a watercolor, or I want something like this, or I want something like that, but not necessarily someone else's style. It might be multiple combinations of styles that you're after, or whatever it is. Then you are literally creating something that's new and very fresh and very different. And maybe you can use it to create your own style. Yeah, okay. So there's a case in Australian law. Well, that's interesting, Rebecca, that that says AI content can't be protected by copyright. So there you go. But I guess what Leonardo is saying is they're giving you that right. So they don't have that right. But other platforms will want to hang on to that right because it's their tool that's generating it. But yeah, it's a changing landscape. And I guess in this landscape, one of the things that we need to have on our mind is two things. One is I want to use it ethically for myself and in my leadership in the local church. Number two is I want to be able to do it in such a way that I'm not ripping off someone else's work, but I'm actually using it to, in an original sense, not knocking off and copying someone else. So particularly images, videos, that kind of thing. And the other thing I would say, if you're using ChatGPT as a source in written work, then you need to acknowledge that source. So imagine that you're using ChatGPT, you know, you're writing an email you want to send to a church elder. And you say, ChatGPT, I want to write a letter to an elder and I want it on this subject area and so on. And it can write you that letter and it would sound beautiful. But then that's going to sound like ChatGPT. And you can ask it to write it in more conversationally, and it could do that. Or you could actually come back and say, look, use it as a tutor. You could say, what kinds of things would I need to say and cover in a letter that I write to a senior elder? Notice the difference of that. I'm not getting it to write the letter for me. I'm asking it to help me think around the things that I want to have in that letter. Okay, that's better use of it because then it's your voice that's actually writing and not it. After you've written your letter, you could copy and paste your letter there and get it to critique it and give you feedback on where you could improve it without actually rewriting the letter for you. And then you're learning how to write and craft better, right? So it's actually improving your ability to work. What I will say also is this: intellectual property, if you're dealing with something that is super sensitive and you put that on ChatGPT, you're in violation of maybe confidentiality agreements and all sorts of things. So you don't go putting on something onto ChatGPT or other AI platforms that you don't A, have permission to use, and that B, it's not proprietary information. So like in my university setting, I'm not going to put in their content from the lectures that we're doing because that's owned by the university. I'm not going to put on there, you know, all sorts of sensitive stuff, but I am going to then use it as a tool to help me in my thinking, but that's all. I'm not going to let it do the work for me. Even though it looks like I'm getting it to generate all these lists of things, I'm taking that as a brainstorming session into my workflow. And I'd suggest that's the wise way to use it as well. Take this as a brainstorming tool into your workflow. You will find it'll speed up your work. You'll have maybe better thinking because it's thinking more broadly of the categories, and you can enhance what you do. So there we go. I'm happy to stay around for a little bit and answer questions if you've got any. And if you want for me to email some of these documents I was talking around, just leave your email address there in the chat for me. That would be great. And I can make sure you get that. Otherwise, I will also post some of these documents on AUC Ministerial so you can actually access them there and have a go. The other thing I would say is this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end. And what's needed from here is you need to talk to your MinSec and say to them, hey, we need to be talking about this in our pastors' meetings. We need to get people in, specialists in. We need to start having more of these conversations. The questions that Rebecca are asking around the ethics of it. We need better answers. We need our legal teams looking at this and coming up with better answers. So yeah, there's all sorts of issues that are here, but I think it's an amazing set of tools that if we were to use them wisely and well, it can actually serve us in our local church so much better. There's a lot of other things that I've got in the AI prompts, how you could use it for, say, planning your sermonic year plan and all sorts of interesting things that you can get it to do work for you, and reasonably creative work that can really help you map out things. So their prompts there, have a play around with them and get an experience for the kinds of things it can do. And if in the future you want to learn more, the same Zoom link we're using today is the same one that I'm going to be using in running a digital ministry club here on campus, where we're going to be going into a lot more things that would be part of the digital ministry workflow that pastors should be around. They will be recorded, but they'll be recorded in-house. But if you wanted to join in those, you'd be very welcome to join in those at any point using the same link. And I'll put the time of when that is on AUC Ministerial as well. Have we earned a thumbs up today? All right. I would be really interested in your feedback as well. Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate that. And Jaden, yeah, if you can just leave some feedback there, that would be really useful. If you think that there's something that that would be useful in a future conversation, maybe it's something I can talk with Brendan about, and we can actually add that to the mix, whether it's me or someone else talking around that. It would be a great thing to include as a conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right, guys. Well, I think we'll leave it at there. I will stop the record now, and I'll just say God bless and have fun experimenting, but don't lose your voice and don't lose yourself in this. All right. I'll catch you next time. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Neil.
Welcome.